about 1,500 kilometres off the east coast of Australia, is a place sometimes called Paris in the Pacific. And in May, this happened.
Tourists were evacuated from the popular holiday island New Caledonia after the worst riots in 40 years.
The streets littered with wreckage.
13 deaths, hundreds of businesses battered.
It's not yet clear how or when this crisis will be resolved.
This is the latest chapter in a decades-old struggle inside the French territory, between those who want an independent New Caledonia and those who want to remain part of the French Republic.
The aspiration of independence supporters is simply political and constitutional independence from what they regard as a colonising power that simply never left.
The idea that France would give up its territory is hard for a big part of the population to accept.
So why has this historic struggle again erupted into violence? And why does France not want to lose New Caledonia? New Caledonia is one of many islands seized by European empires throughout the 19th century. But while many other Pacific islands gained their independence in the 1970s and 80s, New Caledonia is different.
There are a lot of people in New Caledonia who identify as French. They are loyal to France and they think of themselves as French, not as New Caledonian.
Today, New Caledonia has a locally elected government that controls areas like health and agriculture. But France still has power over defence, foreign policy, the justice system, and currency. That's a big problem for many in the Indigenous Kanak community.
So we've been pushing for independence for New Caledonia so that we are able to manage our own affairs, just like in the other independent countries.
And it's not just about control, but equality.
There's still a vast gulf between the wealthy people living in the southern suburbs and the thousands of people who live in squatter settlements. And that was shown during the crisis where young people and not so young came out of the squatter settlements to attack supermarkets, to burn down the Porsche dealership, to really show that the economic, social, political gulf is very deep.
Money from France underpins much of New Caledonia's economy. It gives more than €1 billion each year, about 20% of New Caledonia's GDP, with much of it going towards France's military and civil administrations there. And a lot of that funding, however unequally distributed, will likely disappear if New Caledonia becomes independent. The French ambassador says that's a decision for the people.
So it's not that France is hanging onto those territories, it's the fact that there are lots of people, actually the majority, who are attached to being in the French Republic.
It's estimated New Caledonia will need €4 billion to rebuild after this year's unrest. So what's in it for France to keep New Caledonia? Well, there are three big reasons. One is control of the ocean. New Caledonia gives France a massive exclusive economic zone where it can exploit natural resources.
And at a time where people talk of the blue economy, of seabed resources, deep sea oil and gas, fisheries, marine biodiversity, that's an incredible resource to control.
Another benefit is New Caledonia's large reserves of nickel, a precious commodity for renewable technologies and something President Macron raised on a visit last year. And then there's security. As more powerful countries turn their attention to the Pacific, France wants to be a balancing force, one that promotes a less confrontational approach to containing China's ambition.
New Caledonia is key to France's argument that it is an Indo-Pacific nation and a key actor in the region. They've indeed argued that the growing competition between China and the United States, but also the economic growth in the region for the past 2 decades and its vulnerability to environmental issues and climate change, make it an area to prioritize.
And France's desire to remain in the Pacific is much about power as prestige.
France has always been obsessed with its international status. It constantly tries to promote the idea that France is more than a middle-sized power.
But supporters of independence are more concerned about controlling their own affairs. To address the matter, New Caledonia has held 3 referendums on the issue. In 2018, 57% rejected independence. In 2020, that shrunk to 53%. But the third referendum in 2021 remains controversial. Pro-independence groups requested a delay while the Kanak community mourned people who died from COVID. When France refused, pro-independence supporters boycotted. Unsurprisingly, nearly 97% voted to stay with France, a result the independence movement rejects. Tensions radically escalated when French lawmakers tried to reform the electoral system. For years, only families who had lived in New Caledonia before 1998 could vote in local elections. Paris wanted to scrap those restrictions, adding more non-Kanak people to voting rolls. Independence supporters feared that would skew any future referendum, and so people took to the streets.
Many independence supporters thought we will now never, ever win because the vote will be immediately slanted towards continued links with France.
After months of unrest, France dumped the reforms, and the parties are expected to resume talks over New Caledonia's political status. Some pro-independence groups want a fourth referendum. France's status in the Pacific is on the line.
France indeed cannot claim to be an Indo-Pacific power if it does not listen to indigenous communities.
One thing that's clear, there can be no solution without the Indigenous Kanak people. The younger generation has shown over the last 6 months that they still want a pathway towards independence and sovereignty. Can that be done within the French Republic? Time will tell.